Hello, and welcome to Lamplighter. We are already on day 13 of our quest of reading through the Bible this year. Over the last several days, we have been reading about a promise that God made to Abraham, a promise that he would bless all the nations of the world through his descendants, and a promise that included a land where his family would dwell, later known as the land of Canaan or the Promised Land. When the promise is made to Abraham, he is 75 years old. His wife, Sarah, is 65 years old and has never been able to have children. She is barren. It seems like an impossible promise, but God fulfills that promise with the birth of Isaac. Fascinatingly, that birth happens when Abraham is 100 years old, and Sarah, who had always been barren, is now able to have a son when she's 90 years old. Remember, the story is about God. And so God works this miracle. He fulfills the first part of the promise by giving Abraham and Sarah a son. We read on, and this son, Isaac, later becomes an adult. He goes back to his family's homeland in the area of Haran to find a wife for himself. Actually, a servant, if you remember, was sent to find a wife for Isaac, and Rebekah is selected. Interestingly, once again, Rebekah is someone who is not able to have children. She too is barren. And Isaac prays to God, asks God to open her womb, and God continues to fill the promise that he made to Abraham about offspring by opening Sarah's womb and giving her two sons, twins, Jacob and Esau. Now, as we read in today's reading, Jacob is an adult. He is fleeing from his brother Esau, from whom he stole the blessing and the birthright, according to Esau. Jacob is fleeing back to his family's homeland, and there he meets Rachel. He wants to marry Rachel, and so he bargains with her father Laban that he will work 7 years in order to have Rachel as his wife. Laban agrees. Jacob works 7 years for Rachel, and I love where the passage says these 7 years seem to just fly by for him because he was so in love with Rachel. At the end of the 7 years, Laban deceives or tricks Jacob and gives him his oldest daughter Leah instead. Now, Jacob really shouldn't get too upset about that because he himself has been quite a deceiver already. Turnabout is fair play, some might say. But when he protests, Laban says, I'll go ahead and give you Rachel if you'll work another 7 years. And so Joseph does just that. So when When Jacob then has Rachel, he is clearly in love with her and not so much with Leah. And now we're told that Rachel is barren. This is the third generation of this promise where there has been a barren wife. And so, as we begin to read about Jacob having children, the children first come through Leah. She is the one who feels unloved by her husband, and so God opens her womb and gives her 4 sons to provide for Jacob. Rachel sees this, gets jealous, provides her handmaiden to Jacob in her stead, and Jacob is able to have 2 more sons through Rachel's handmaiden. Leah sees this and responds in kind, giving her handmaiden to Jacob, and 2 more sons are born. Finally, Leah has 2 more sons and a daughter by the name of Dinah. And then finally, God steps in and opens Rachel's womb, and she's able to give birth to a son by the name of Joseph, who's going to play a significant role as the story continues to unfold. Now, there's one thing I want to point out to you here. One of the things that I always say about Bible study, be sure and read the footnotes. Sometimes they're very helpful. This is a section where every one of the sons of Jacob, all 12 of them, or at least 11 so far, are given specific names. And if you look at the footnotes, the name has meaning. It's telling the story. Each of these sons born is a part of the telling of a story. But remember, as always, the story is not about Jacob. The story is not about Leah and Rachel and their handmaidens. The story is about God. He continues to remember a promise that he made long before to Abraham. He continues to unfold the blessing of all the nations of the world through Abraham's offspring. He has done it through Isaac, and now he continues through Jacob. These three, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are often referred to as the patriarchs, and the 12 sons of Jacob will ultimately become the 12 tribes of Israel. That's a significant part of the history in the story as we go along. Jacob continues to be a deceiver. Laban continues to be a deceiver. They battle with one another over property, and in the end, Jacob is going to take his family finally and leave Laban, but the trick has been played by Laban on Jacob, and the trick has been played by Jacob on Laban. And in all of this, God blesses them both. Again, the story is about God. Isn't this interesting? It is a fascinating tale, and not just a tale, not as if it's some sort of fairy tale. This is true events. This is an actual telling of the unfolding of the history of mankind, and it's all about God himself, the creator of the world. Isn't it great to be a lamplighter? His word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. I hope you have a blessed day.